The Catalarians had traveled across the stars, conquering countless worlds and enslaving countless species. They were the most powerful empire in the galaxy, and they thought they knew everything there was to know about life. But when they set their sights on Earth, they made a huge mistake. They had heard stories about Earth, rumors from other species. They were told that Earth was a death world, a planet so dangerous that only the toughest could survive. But they didn't believe it. They thought it was just a myth, a way for other species to explain their failures. "We'll crush them in no time," Commander Vora said with a confident smile as he looked at the blue planet below. His crew, standing by his side, nodded in agreement. "Their primitive technology can't even reach the stars. They'll never see us coming." The Calarians didn't expect Earth to be any different from the other worlds they had conquered. They had been to dozens of planets, wiped out their armies, and enslaved the survivors. They were used to taking what they wanted, but Earth was different. The moment the Xalarian fleet entered Earth's atmosphere, they knew something was wrong. The planet was chaotic. The skies were filled with storms. Earth's surface was covered in massive jungles, wild animals, and deadly weather patterns. To the Xalarians, it looked like a war zone, far more dangerous than they had anticipated. "Activate the shields," Commander Vora ordered, his tone a little less sure now. But nothing could prepare the Xalarians for what they were about to face. As their ships descended, they were met by a strange sound, a loud, deep hum. It was a noise they had never heard before. They looked out the windows of their ships to see humans. They were standing on the ground, staring up at the invaders. At first, the Xalarians thought the humans were weak, defenseless creatures. But then they saw something they didn't expect. The humans didn't run. They didn't scream in fear. Instead, they stood their ground. "You are trespassing on our land," one of the humans yelled. His voice echoed across the battlefield. The Xalarians were confused. How could these fragile beings have the audacity to speak to them like that? Before they could react, a strange object shot out from the earth below. It was a projectile, but it wasn't a weapon the Xalarians had ever seen before. It was made of metal and rock, and it hit one of their ships, causing a huge explosion. The Xalarians were stunned. "What just happened?" Commander Vora asked, eyes wide in disbelief. The human standing in front of him, an ordinary man, dressed in simple clothes, raised his arms and shouted, "This is our planet, and you're not welcome here." The Xalarians quickly realized that they had made a huge mistake. These humans weren't like any species they had encountered. They weren't afraid. They weren't weak. They fought with a kind of strength and resilience the Xalarians had never seen before. But the shock didn't end there. As the Xalarians began to engage the humans, they found that their technology was far more advanced than they had imagined. Humans may not have had the powerful weapons the Xalarians did, but they were clever. They used the environment to their advantage, hiding in the dense forests, setting traps, and attacking from unexpected angles. "How are they doing this?" Commander Vora muttered, watching his fleet struggle to maintain control. The Xalarians had always relied on their superior technology to crush their enemies. But now, against the humans, they were losing. Every time they thought they had the upper hand, the humans turned the tables. "This is impossible," one of the officers said, his voice trembling. "They should be terrified of us." "They're not," Commander Vora replied, his eyes narrowing. "And that's what makes them dangerous." The humans continued to fight back fiercely, and the Xalarian forces began to falter. They couldn't understand it. How were these so-called savages able to put up such a fight? "Retreat," Commander Vora ordered, his voice filled with frustration. "We need to regroup. This isn't over." As the Xalarian fleet pulled back, the humans cheered. They had won the first battle. But the Xalarians knew this was just the beginning. They couldn't understand how it was possible. They had seen death and destruction across the galaxy, but nothing like this. "These humans are stronger than we thought. Vora said, his face pale. "They are not as weak as we believed. We must find a way to defeat them, or this will be our downfall." The humans, on the other hand, were filled with hope. For the first time in years, they felt like they had a chance. They had faced the unknown, the impossible, and had come out victorious. But they knew that this was only the beginning. The Excelarians wouldn't stop. They would be back. And when they did return, the humans would be ready. The Excelarians had retreated, but the victory on Earth was far from certain. The humans were still reeling from the shock of the first attack, unsure of what would happen next. But one thing was clear: they would not back down. They knew the Excelarians would regroup and return with even more force. And so, humanity began to prepare, determined to show the invaders that Earth was not a place to be conquered easily. Across the globe, humans came together, sharing resources, knowledge, and strategies. No longer divided by borders, they united under a single purpose: survival. The Excelarians had made one mistake. They had underestimated the humans' ability to adapt. The humans didn't just fight back. They learned quickly, using their surroundings to their advantage. The dense jungles of Earth became their best allies. They crafted makeshift weapons, using the land to trap, surprise, and outsmart the invaders at every turn. The Excelarians, with their advanced technology, were used to fighting in open fields, where their power could overwhelm their enemies. But on Earth, it was a different story. The terrain was their enemy as much as the humans were. At first, the Excelarians thought the humans were just lucky. They assumed the traps and ambushes were random, but it didn't take long before they realized the humans were deliberate, methodical, and clever. They had no intention of letting the Excelarians have their way. But even with this new understanding, the Excelarians did not give up. They had weapons capable of destroying entire cities, and they weren't afraid to use them. But every time they launched an attack, they found themselves face to face with unexpected resistance. One Solarian officer, an experienced tactician named Kor, watched the unfolding battles with growing frustration. "How can they keep doing this?" he muttered, as a group of human soldiers launched another surprise attack, forcing the Excelarians to retreat once again. Kor had studied every species he had encountered, and he had never seen anything like this before. The humans didn't fight with the same kind of precision or coordination that the Excelarians did, yet they were incredibly effective. They relied on something different, something that Kor could not understand. "They're not just fighting to survive," Kor said quietly. "They're fighting because they believe they can win." It was this unshakable belief that was beginning to turn the tide. The humans were outmatched in terms of firepower, but they had something far more valuable: their will to fight. Each small victory fueled their confidence, and the world watched as humanity turned from a desperate race trying to hold on to a world under siege into an unstoppable force. The Excelarians were still powerful, but they had underestimated their enemy in ways they could not fix. Back on Earth, the leaders of the resistance met to discuss their next move. They knew the Excelarians would not give up, and they could not afford to be complacent. The humans had won battles, but the war was far from over. "We can't just keep defending ourselves," one leader said. "We need to take the fight to them. We need to show them that we will not be their slaves." The idea of an offensive was terrifying. Humanity had no ships capable of reaching the Excelarian homeworld, and the Excelarians had a fleet strong enough to wipe out Earth with a single strike. But it was the only option. They had no choice but to fight back with everything they had. With the Excelarians momentarily pushed back, the humans took a breath. They quickly worked to strengthen their defenses, using their newfound unity to build weapons and craft strategies that made the invaders seem less invincible. Humanity had found its rhythm. Every day, they grew stronger, more organized, and more determined. But the Excelarians were no fools. They were planning their next move, and they would be even more ruthless. But now, the humans were ready for them. The battle for Earth was just beginning. The Excelarians had regrouped, and they were more prepared than ever. Their first assault on Earth had been a failure, but they had learned valuable lessons. They had underestimated the humans' resilience and cunning. Now, with reinforcements, they returned with greater firepower, determined to finish what they had started. But what they didn't expect was that humanity had learned just as much from the first battle as they had. The humans didn't have the advanced technology or weapons the Xelarians possessed, but they had something more dangerous: an unyielding will to survive. Over the past few weeks, humanity had adapted. They had used their knowledge of Earth's terrain to their advantage, setting up more traps, ambushes, and hidden strongholds. Every village, every city, had become a battlefield. But the humans didn't fight in the way the Xelarians were used to. They didn't march into battle with their heads held high, ready to face overwhelming odds with their weapons raised. Instead, they'd fought like shadows, attacking from the dark corners of the world, striking when the Xelarians least expected it. Commander Vora, once confident in his superiority, began to feel the pressure. He had never encountered an enemy like this before. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were fighting with a ferocity that made the Xelarians' blood run cold. "They won't stop," Vora muttered to himself as he watched the latest battle unfold on his command screen. Why won't they just give up? The Xelarians had expected the humans to be terrified. They expected them to be broken by their initial attack. But instead, every failure only made the humans more determined. With each defeat, humanity's resolve grew stronger. They weren't just defending their planet. They were defending their right to exist. And the Xelarians had underestimated how powerful that could be. The humans had begun to organize into large resistance groups, each one working together, sharing information, and coordinating strikes against the Xelarians. They used their knowledge of the land and their resourcefulness to craft weapons and tools that could take down Xelarian machines. They had no formal military training, but they made up for it with creativity and a deep, burning desire to protect their homes. One of the human leaders, a woman named Captain Lee, had become a symbol of the resistance. She wasn't a general or a commander by rank, but by respect. Her leadership was based on the trust the people had in her ability to guide them, to make the right decisions when it seemed like all hope was lost. Her team had managed to destroy several key Xelarian weapons factories, crippling their production of advanced technology. The Xelarians didn't expect the humans to know how to sabotage their factories, but Lee had worked with her team to learn everything they could about Xelarian technology. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to cause serious damage. As the humans launched more attacks, the Xelarians started to realize they were facing an enemy that wasn't just capable of fighting back. These humans were capable of winning. The aliens who had once ruled with fear were beginning to feel something they had never experienced: uncertainty. Kor, the Xelarian tactician who had been assigned to Earth's defense, began to see the writing on the wall. "They're not like other species," he said, pacing in front of his officers. "We've fought countless species across the galaxy, but none have fought like this. They're unpredictable." Kor's words hit the officers like a slap in the face. The Xelarians were used to strategy, to control, and to overwhelming strength. They didn't know how to deal with an enemy who didn't play by the rules. The humans' ability to adapt was what truly made them dangerous. When the Xelarians sent in large strike forces, the humans struck back with smaller, more agile units. They used guerrilla tactics, attacking and disappearing before the Xelarians could respond. When the Xelarians sent their most advanced machines, the humans developed new weapons that could disable them. No matter what the Xelarians threw at them, the humans found a way to fight back. But even as the humans' resistance grew stronger, they knew they couldn't keep fighting this way forever. The Xelarians had the advantage in firepower and numbers. The humans needed a plan, something more than just surviving from one day to the next. They needed a way to hit the Xelarians where it hurt. They needed to show the invaders that Earth was not just a planet full of savages. It was a planet full of warriors who would never give up, no matter how powerful their enemies were. In a hidden bunker deep beneath the Earth, A group of scientists worked day and night, determined to find a way to turn the tide. They had learned from the Xalarians, studied their technology, and had begun to develop new weapons of their own. It wasn't perfect, but it was their best hope. The Xalarians had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt. And now, humanity was ready to show them just how capable they were. The humans' resistance was no longer a mere annoyance to the Xalarians. It was becoming a serious problem. Every attempt to crush the human forces seemed to be met with unexpected setbacks. Their guerrilla tactics were beginning to take a toll on the Xalarian morale. No longer was it a question of whether the humans could survive. It was becoming a question of how long the Xalarians could hold onto their control over Earth. Commander Vora paced back and forth in his command room, frustration growing with each passing day. His forces had suffered losses, significant losses. The humans were smarter than expected, more resourceful than any species they had previously encountered. The resistance was small but well organized, and they seemed to have an endless supply of courage. "They're like ants," Vora muttered, staring at the holographic map of Earth. "No matter how many we crush, more pop up. It's like they don't stop fighting." But Vora wasn't the only one frustrated. Kor, the tactician, was growing increasingly uneasy. He had been studying the humans for weeks now, and something was becoming clear. They were learning. They weren't just surviving. They were evolving. What started as small, clever ambushes had turned into well-coordinated attacks. The humans were adapting faster than they could keep up. "We need to change our strategy," Kor suggested. "We can't keep fighting them this way. Their numbers are small, but their tactics are destroying us." But Vora was determined. "We'll wipe them out with one decisive strike," he said. "We'll take control of the planet's major cities, and that will break their will." The plan was set in motion. The Xalarians would launch an all-out assault on Earth's largest cities, overwhelming the remaining resistance with their superior numbers and firepower. They would crush humanity's last strongholds in a matter of days. But the humans had something else in mind. Captain Lee, the leader of the resistance, had been working on a plan of her own. She had been waiting for the Xalarians to make their move. She knew that the Xalarians had underestimated them in the past, and this time they would make the Xalarians pay for that mistake. The resistance had been working in secret, and Lee had learned something the Xalarians had never considered. The human spirit was not so easily broken. In the face of overwhelming odds, the humans would rise. The weapons they had developed with the help of the scientists were still not as advanced as the Xalarian technology, but they were enough to make the Xalarians feel vulnerable. Lee gathered her most trusted commanders and briefed them on the plan. "We know they're coming. We know they're going to attack our cities. But that's exactly what we want. We're going to use their strength against them." Her plan was simple but dangerous. The resistance would lure the Xalarian forces into the cities, creating chaos and confusion. As the invaders pushed forward, the humans would strike from unexpected locations, forcing them into tight corners. The Xalarians were used to open, overwhelming combat, but in the cities, the narrow streets and buildings would make it difficult for them to use their full power. "We'll give them a false sense of victory," Lee explained. "Let them think they've won. And then, when they least expect it, we'll turn the tables." The days leading up to the attack were filled with tension. The humans prepared their weapons, set their traps, and waited. Every soldier, every fighter, knew what was at stake. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for their future, for their children, for their way of life. On the day of the assault, the humans executed their plan flawlessly. The Xalarians, confident in their superiority, moved into the city with all their might. The streets were filled with the sound of explosions, of weapons being fired, of buildings crumbling. The humans retreated in the face of the Xalarian assault, making it look as though they were being driven back. But it was all part of the plan. As the Xalarians advanced, they were funneled into narrow alleyways, trapped in the tight spaces where their machines couldn't move freely. Suddenly, from all directions, the humans struck. The hidden resistance fighters attacked with precision, disabling key Xalarian machines, throwing grenades into their ranks, and taking down entire squads. For the first time, the Xalarians were the ones who were taken by surprise. They had expected the humans to fight with desperation, but this wasn't desperation. This was strategy. This was a people who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. The Xalarians, with their advanced technology and superior numbers, were now on the defensive, struggling to maintain control. Kor watched in disbelief as the Xalarians were pushed back, their forces scattered and thrown into disarray. This can't be happening, he muttered. How are they doing this? The humans were relentless. They knew that victory wouldn't come easily, but for the first time since the Xalarians had arrived, it felt possible. They weren't just defending their homes, they were reclaiming their planet. The Xalarians were reeling. What had started as a swift and efficient invasion had turned into a prolonged nightmare. Every move they made to assert dominance was met with fierce resistance, but nothing prepared them for the force of the humans' retaliation. The attack in the city had been a turning point, and for the first time, the Xalarians began to doubt whether they could ever truly defeat humanity. Commander Vora stood before his command center, his face grim as he watched the unfolding reports. His forces, once so confident and powerful, were now stretched thin. Cities that had once been symbols of Xalarian control were now contested battlefields. The humans had found new ways to strike, forcing the Xalarians to waste valuable resources and soldiers. And worse yet, the humans had found a way to exploit the Xalarian machines' weaknesses. Their tactics are ingenious, Vora admitted reluctantly. We've never faced an enemy like this before. Kor, the Xalarian tactician, clenched his fists in frustration. He had spent years strategizing, studying the methods of countless species across the galaxy, but nothing had prepared him for the unpredictability of human warfare. The humans didn't follow the rules. They didn't fight like anything they had ever faced. Every victory felt like a fluke, and every defeat was followed by another round of unimaginable ingenuity from the humans. We need to hit them hard, break their morale, Kor suggested, trying to hide the growing panic in his voice. Vora hesitated. We've already tried that. Every time we think they're finished, they come back stronger. While the Xalarians scrambled to regroup, Captain Lee and the human resistance were already planning their next move. Lee knew the Xalarians were becoming desperate, but so were the humans. Earth was all they had left, and there was no turning back now. They couldn't afford to lose, not when they were so close to victory. Lee and her top officers huddled together in a small underground bunker, studying the latest Xalarian movements. They knew that the aliens would try to break the human will once again, just as they had before. But they also knew that they couldn't just keep fighting the same way. If they were going to win, they had to find the Xalarians' weak point and exploit it. The Xalarians have become predictable, Lee said, her voice calm but determined. They've thrown everything they have at us, but they haven't realized one thing. They're still treating us like a small, unorganized species. They haven't understood that we are not just survivors. We're fighters. Her words hit the room like a jolt of electricity. It was true. The humans had proven themselves time and time again, and the Xalarians were starting to get frustrated. They couldn't keep up with the humans' creativity, their determination, and their ability to adapt. And now, with the planet's most important cities under siege, the humans had the Xalarians exactly where they wanted them. We need to take out their command structure, Lee continued. If we can cripple their leadership, we can break their resolve. We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting to show them that humans are not to be underestimated. The plan was risky, but it was their best chance. The Xalarians had established a heavily fortified command center located in one of Earth's largest cities. It was from there that they coordinated their attacks, issuing orders to their fleets and controlling the overall strategy. If the humans could infiltrate and destroy the command center, it would create chaos among the invaders, giving them a much-needed advantage. Captain Lee's team was ready for the mission. They gathered their best fighters, scientists, and engineers, determined to bring down the heart of the Xalarian invasion. With their weapons, knowledge, and unbreakable will, they set out under the cover of night. The Xalarians might have superior technology, but they didn't have the same heart and spirit that the humans had. And that was what made them dangerous. The humans navigated through the city in silence, sticking to the shadows, blending with their surroundings. They had become experts in stealth, using the Xalarians' overconfidence to their advantage. The aliens never suspected that their enemies could move so swiftly and quietly within the heart of their controlled territory. Every step taken was one closer to their target. Hours later, the team arrived at the Xalarian command center. It was heavily guarded, but the humans had spent weeks studying the building's layout, learning its weaknesses, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They planted explosives at critical points and sabotaged the city's communication lines, ensuring that the Xalarians wouldn't be able to call for reinforcements or coordinate any countermeasures. With everything set, Captain Lee gave the signal. The first explosion rocked the command center, sending shockwaves through the building. Chaos erupted as the Xalarians scrambled to assess the damage. But it was too late. The humans were already inside, tearing through the defenses with a vengeance. Fighting broke out in the corridors, the sounds of weapons and shouts filling the air. The humans moved with precision, taking out enemy forces one by one. They were unstoppable. For every Xalarian soldier that fell, 2 more seemed to rise in their place. But the humans pressed on, determined to see this mission through. When they finally reached the command room, they encountered the last line of defense, a heavily armed Xalarian commander who had been overseeing the operation. But this was where humanity's will shone brightest. Captain Lee fought with everything she had, and in the end, it was her strength, her leadership, and her unbreakable spirit that led to the commander's defeat. The destruction of the Xalarian command center was a crushing blow to the invaders. Without a central command to direct them, the Xalarian forces were thrown into disarray. The humans had proven something to them, something that no one could deny. Humans were capable of anything, and the fight was far from over. As the humans regrouped and prepared for the next phase of the war, the Xalarians were left reeling. Their invasion had faltered, their control was slipping, and now they had a new enemy to fear, not just a savage species, but one that had the heart and strength to win. The news of the destruction of the Xalarian command center spread like wildfire across the human resistance networks. It was a victory, yes, but the war was far from over. Humanity had struck a serious blow, but the Xalarians were not a species to back down easily. They would regroup, reorganize, and strike again. The humans knew this, but they also knew that this victory was more than just a symbolic win. It was proof that the Xalarians could be beaten. Captain Lee stood in front of a war table, her face hard with determination. Her team had successfully completed their mission, but she could see the anxiety in their eyes. Every victory came with a cost. The humans had taken casualties. Some had fallen in the attack on the Xalarian base. And while the victory was a clear message to the invaders, Lee knew that the next strike would be even harder. "Do not let up," she said firmly to her commanders. "We've shaken them, but they're still out there. And they're going to come for us with everything they've got." Lee's voice was a call to arms, urging the humans to keep pushing forward. The Xalarian forces were reeling, but they would recover. They had to strike again before the Xalarians could fully reorganize. The humans needed to keep the pressure on. Vora, on the other hand, was in his war room, his face clouded with fury. His forces had been humiliated. The attack on the command center was a serious blow, one that he hadn't expected. He paced angrily, trying to think of the best way to regain control. The humans, whom he had underestimated so many times before, had proven themselves to be more than just a thorn in his side. "We cannot allow this to continue," Vora growled to his officers. These humans have shown they are capable of much more than we expected. They have earned our respect, but they will not defeat us. He knew the humans were gathering their forces, preparing for the next wave of attacks. He had to act fast. The only way to secure his position was to regain control of Earth completely. And for that, he needed a decisive victory, a victory that would break humanity's spirit for good. "We must crush them," Vora ordered, his voice dark and cold. "We will hit them hard. We will burn their cities, destroy their homes, and erase their will to fight. No more games. No more mercy." As the Xalarian war machine began its mobilization, Captain Lee's team was already planning their next steps. They couldn't afford to wait. The humans needed to strike before the Xalarians could regroup, but this time they had to be careful. The Xalarians were smarter than they had been, and the next attack could be the one that broke them. Lee's eyes burned with determination as she stood before her officers. "The Xalarians are coming. We know that, but they are vulnerable. We will not stop fighting. We will not back down. We have proven ourselves before, and now we will prove it again." Her words were a rallying cry, a reminder that they had already won once, and they could do it again. The humans may have been a small species in a galaxy full of powerful beings, but they were relentless. They had something the Xalarians lacked: the ability to never give up, no matter how hopeless the odds seemed. In the days that followed, humanity's forces moved like shadows. They couldn't match the Xalarian strength head-on, but they didn't need to. They needed to keep the invaders off balance, to prevent them from gaining full control over the planet. The resistance spread out across the continents, launching small but highly effective strikes against Xalarian supply lines, fortifications, and communication hubs. Every move the humans made was designed to undermine the Xalarians, to keep them guessing, to make them second-guess every decision. And it worked. The Xalarians, used to dominating their enemies with sheer force, found themselves struggling to maintain control. Their once perfect strategy was slowly unraveling. The humans were winning the battle of wills. But the final blow came when a large Xalarian fleet, determined to reclaim the lost cities, made its way toward Earth. The humans knew this was coming, and they had been preparing for it. They didn't have the firepower to go toe-to-toe with the Xalarian fleet, but they had something the aliens didn't: the element of surprise. As the fleet neared Earth, the humans launched a daring counterattack. Using modified weapons, new tactics, and a combination of stolen Xalarian technology, they turned the tide. The Xalarian fleet, which had once seemed invincible, was now under attack from all sides. The humans didn't wait for permission. They acted fast, hitting the Xalarians where it hurt the most: their ships, their weapons, and their morale. It was chaos. Explosions lit up the night sky as the humans fought tooth and nail to defend their planet. The Xalarians were losing control, their once mighty ships falling one by one as human forces attacked with relentless precision. The tide was shifting. The humans had taken the fight to the stars, and they were winning. For the first time since the Xalarian invasion began, Commander Vora felt fear. The humans had proven that they could fight on their terms, and they were doing it again, this time on a galactic scale. His fleet was in disarray, and their numbers were dwindling. The humans had forced them into a position they couldn't escape. Vora looked out at the battlefield, knowing that he was running out of options. The humans had shown them that even the mightiest empire could be brought down if you never stopped fighting. The humans had made their mark, and there was no going back. The Xalarians had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. The battle for Earth was not just a fight for survival, it was the fight for the future, and the humans were determined to win. The final battle had arrived. The humans had fought with everything they had, and now the fate of Earth, and perhaps the entire galaxy, was hanging in the balance. The Xalarians had underestimated humanity at every turn, and now they would pay the ultimate price. Captain Lee stood at the helm of a makeshift human warship, her eyes focused on the battlefield that stretched out before her. The sky above Earth was filled with the wreckage of Solarian ships, their once imposing fleets now crumbling under the force of humanity's relentless attacks. The human resistance, though vastly outnumbered and underpowered, had proven that their will to fight was stronger than any weapon the Solarians possessed. Lee felt a sense of resolve settle over her as she looked to her team. They had survived against impossible odds, and now they were ready to end this war once and for all. The Solarians had thrown everything they had at Earth, but the humans had adapted, learned, and fought back. They were no longer the vulnerable species the Solarians had thought they were. They were warriors, and they were ready for the final confrontation. In space, the last remnants of the Solarian fleet were retreating. But Commander Vora knew he couldn't afford to retreat any longer. His pride, his empire, everything he had built was slipping away. He had underestimated the humans, and now he had one last chance to prove that the Solarian Empire was not so easily broken. "We cannot let them win," Vora muttered to himself, his voice full of frustration and anger. "We will fight to the end." He knew the humans were preparing for their final strike. They had the numbers, the firepower, and the determination. But the Solarians had one thing left to rely on: fear. They had always ruled through fear, and Vora was determined to make the humans fear them one last time. With a deep breath, he gave the order. The remaining Solarian ships adjusted their course, heading directly for Earth. They would end this war now, once and for all. Back on Earth, Lee received the news. The Solarians were coming, all of them, in a final desperate attempt to take control of the planet. This was it. No more hiding. No more small skirmishes. This was the battle that would decide the fate of humanity. Lee looked out at her crew, her voice calm but filled with determination. "We've come this far. They thought we were weak. They thought we were nothing. But we've proven them wrong every step of the way. Now it's time to show them what humanity is really capable of." The human ships took position around Earth, waiting for the Solarian fleet to make its move. Lee's heart raced in her chest. She knew this would be their hardest fight yet, but she also knew that the humans would never give up, no matter how overwhelming the odds seemed. The Solarian fleet surged forward, their ships enormous and intimidating. But the humans were ready. The final battle began with a massive burst of energy as both sides unleashed their weapons. Laser fire, explosions, and debris filled the space around Earth, creating a chaotic and deadly battlefield. It wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a fight for the future, for the right to exist as a species. The humans fought with everything they had, using every ounce of their ingenuity, their strength, and their willpower to push back the invaders. The battle raged for hours, with both sides suffering heavy losses. The Solarian ships, once so confident, were now outmatched by the relentless human counterattack. Every time the Solarians regrouped, the humans found a way to break their lines. Every time the Solarian fleet thought they had gained the upper hand, the humans pushed back, harder and stronger than ever before. And then, the turning point came. Captain Lee led a squadron of human ships on a daring maneuver to flank the Solarians. The Solarians, caught off guard by the human strategy, found their fleet breaking apart. The humans hit their weak spots, targeting key areas and using the Solarians' own tactics against them. In the chaos of the battle, Vora's flagship, the symbol of Solarian power, was hit. The explosion rocked the Solarian fleet to its core. The humans had done it. They had broken the Solarians' will to fight, and with their flagship destroyed, the invaders began to fall apart. The humans were unstoppable. On Earth, the people watched in awe as the Solarian fleet, now in disarray, began to retreat. The battle was won. Humanity had triumphed over an empire that had once believed it was invincible. But the victory wasn't just about defeating the Solarians. It was about proving that no matter how dark the times seemed, humanity would always rise. They had faced down an alien empire that sought to destroy them, and they had fought back with everything they had. They had shown the universe that humanity was not just a species to be feared, it was a species to be respected. Captain Lee stood on the deck of her ship, looking out at the stars. The battle had been won, but there was still much work to be done. The Exilarian fleet was in retreat, but the humans knew that the galaxy was vast, and there would be other threats. But for now, Earth was safe. For now, humanity had shown that it would not be so easily defeated. And as Lee watched the stars in silence, she knew one thing for certain. The fight wasn't over. But no matter what came next, humanity would always stand tall. They would never back down. And the universe would never forget the day they showed that no empire, no matter how powerful, could defeat the unstoppable force that was humanity.